Welcome, dear listener. Settle in. Let the world outside soften and slip away as we drift together across many centuries, back to a valley cradled high among the clouds, where morning is just beginning to unfurl its silver ribbons over water. Breathe in slowly, breathe out, and imagine, if you will, a great bowl of land rimmed by mountains, smooth volcanic shoulders standing guard over a stillness so complete, so patient, that the stars seem reluctant to leave the sky. This is the Valley of Anahuac, the place between the waters, a highland basin perched nearly 1.5 miles above the distant sea, wrapped in its own weather, its own breath, its own unhurried time. At its heart, 5 great lakes lay linked like a chain of polished turquoise. Zumpango in the cool north, where reeds whispered secrets only the herons could hear. Saltocan, shallow and bright, catching the first pale light like a mirror set down gently upon the earth. Texcoco, broadest of them all, salted and shimmering, its surface so wide that a paddler at its center might feel held between sky and sky. Xochimilco, perfumed with lilies and the soft perfume of floating gardens. And Chalco, where sweet springs fed the water and the cedars leaned close as if listening. Together they formed a single vast heart of water, pulsing slow and steady, connecting villages and islands and gardens and temples, weaving the life of the valley into one flowing pattern. To understand this place, you must understand its water. And to understand its water, you must meet the ones who knew it best, the Canoe Wrights of the Highland shore. Imagine now a cedar-scented cove just before dawn. The air is cool and faintly sweet, carrying the scent of damp wood and lake grass and the distant smoke of cook fires kindling for the day. Somewhere out beyond the reeds, a coot calls softly, then is quiet again. The water is still. So still. It holds the upturned sky within itself, every star a second time, every cloud a gentle twin. Along the shore, long shapes rest on the grass. Canoes, some slender as a feather, some broad-bellied and steady, all of them carved from single great trunks, Ahuehuete and cedar, the patient trees whose roots drank deep of the lake for centuries before ever meeting the adze. Each hull is smooth, darkened with oil, fragrant still with the heart of the forest from which it came. They lie quietly, like sleeping animals, waiting. And here, walking among them with slow, certain steps, come the Canoe Wrights. The Acaleros, as the people of this valley called them, the craftsfolk of the boats. See the lined palms of their hands, softened by decades of smoothing wood grain. See the quiet attention in their eyes, the way they read a hull, the way others might read the wind, or a child's breathing in the night. These are not hurried people. The lake does not reward hurry. The wood does not reward hurry. Their craft is older than memory, older than the great cities that would rise along these shores, older even than the names by which those cities would one day be known. For as long as people had come to drink from these waters, someone had bent to shape the wood that carried them across. Fathers taught sons, mothers taught daughters, aunts taught nieces in the long afternoons. The knowledge passed from hand to hand the way warmth passes along a row of sleeping children beneath a woven blanket, quiet, continuous, whole. Now watch. A woman kneels at the waterline. A woman kneels at the waterline. She lays her palm against the cedar hull of a long, narrow canoe, and the wood, cool from the night, seems to lean ever so slightly into her touch. She speaks softly, the way one might greet an old friend before a long journey. Then she steps back, and the boat is eased into the lake. There is the gentlest sound, a hush, a whisper, a small swallow of water, as the hull settles into its true element. Ripples spread outward in perfect circles, trembling the reflected stars. And all across the 5 lakes, in 100 small coves, 1,000 such moments are unfolding. A paddle dipping, a rope uncoiling, a breath held, released. The valley is waking, not with noise, but with gentleness, with practiced patient love between a people and their water. Rest here a little while. Let your shoulders drop. Let the lapping of water against cedar become the slow rhythm of your own breathing. For we are just beginning, you and I, to drift out into this soft morning, to meet the Wrights and their lakes and the long, quiet story they have to tell. So now, with the water still whispering somewhere behind us, let us turn our steps inland. Let us walk, slowly, slowly, up the soft green slopes that cradle these highland lakes, through the cool morning mist that rises from the reeds, and into the shadowed hush of the forests above. Here, where the air grows thinner and sweeter, where the light comes down in long gold ribbons between the branches, the Canoe Wrights used to walk too. They walked with quiet feet. They walked with listening hearts. Imagine them now, if you will. Trunks so broad that 5 men joining hands could not quite encircle them. Bark the color of wet stone, soft and furrowed, grooved by centuries of rain. Branches spreading wide and low, draped in pale green moss that swayed like the hair of a sleeping giant. Each tree a cathedral, each grove a memory. Some of these cypresses had been standing since before the first pyramids rose from the lake, their roots drinking from hidden springs, their crowns brushing clouds that had passed over the valley 1,000 times. The Wrights did not come here often. They came only when a canoe was needed, and even then, they came carefully, with preparation. Days before the journey, they would abstain from certain foods. They would bathe in cold spring water at dawn. They would gather copal incense and small blue stones and kernels of the first maize, wrapping them in clean cloth to carry up into the hills. To cut a tree without giving was to take without asking. And a canoe born of taking, the old ones said, would never truly float. It would grow heavy in the heart of the lake. It would listen to the wrong voices in the wind. So instead they gave. They gave first with silence. Arriving at the grove, the Wright would sit for a long while, sometimes an entire afternoon, saying nothing, doing nothing, just listening. Listening to the creak of the old trunks as the wind moved through them. Listening to the far-off call of the quetzal, the soft rush of water over stone, the hum of bees in a hollow limb. It was said that a tree would choose its right, and not the other way around. When the tree was chosen, the Wright would speak to it. Not in the language of markets or labor, but in the older language, the one used for mothers and fathers, for grandmothers and sacred lakes. Abuelo, they would say. Grandfather tree, forgive me that I come to ask such a thing of you. Forgive me that I disturb your long standing. Know that your body will not be wasted. Know that your wood will carry fishermen over the lake at dusk. And they would press their forehead to the bark and breathe and wait. Then came the offerings. A small fire kindled at the base of the trunk, fed with copal until the sweet blue smoke curled upward through the branches, weaving itself into the moss, the leaves, the sky, a sprinkle of maize upon the roots, a bead of jade or a flower of marigold tucked into a hollow of the bark. And always a prayer to Tlaloc, to the Lord of the Rains, whose waters had fed this tree across its long, patient life. Tlaloc, giver of rivers, Tlaloc of the green jars, receive our thanks. Do not be angered by our taking, and only then, with the smoke still rising, with the offerings settled into the moss, would the first stone axe be lifted. Even the felling was done slowly. Sometimes a single tree was worked for 2 or 3 full days, not out of weakness, but out of respect. Each cut a conversation, each pause a breath. The wood was allowed to give itself in its own time. How gentle that world was, how unhurried, how full of listening. Rest your head a little deeper now. The forest is cool, the smoke is sweet, and somewhere up ahead, beyond the mist, the lake is still waiting. We walk on. The path is old. Older than the trees that lean above it, older than the stones that border it, older perhaps than memory itself. Its surface is packed soft by centuries of bare feet, of sandal and hoof, of the slow, patient drag of timber. Beneath our steps, the earth gives a little, as though it remembers every traveler who has ever passed this way and welcomes one more. Ahead of us, the great log moves. It is a cypress, an Ahuehuete, felled with long prayer and longer patience in a grove high above the valley. Its wood is pale and fragrant, the color of honey left too long in the jar. Men walk beside it in a loose, easy rhythm, ropes looped across their shoulders, their bare backs shining faintly with the morning. They do not hurry. Hurrying, they know, is the enemy of large things. The log is longer than 3 houses laid end to end, and it moves the way such a creature ought to move, like a slow, sleeping animal being coaxed down a mountainside by people who love it. Beneath the log, rollers of smaller pine turn and turn. Each time the procession advances, a boy at the back lifts the last roller, runs it around to the front, and sets it gently in the path. He has done this 1,000 times today. He will do it 1,000 times more. His small hands are stained with sap, and he smells faintly of the trees. the forest opens. We emerge onto a shoulder of the mountain where the pines thin and the world below is suddenly, softly enormous. Far down in the valley, the lake lies like a sheet of beaten silver. You can almost see the lake breathing. Mist rises from its edges in slow, thoughtful curls. Somewhere out there are the chinampas, the floating gardens, little green rafts of corn and chili stitched into the water. Somewhere out there are the workshops, waiting for this log, waiting for this tree that once held birds in its branches. A breeze comes up the slope to meet us. It smells of resin and of distant cooking fires, and of something sweeter still, the first damp breath of the lake itself. We begin to descend. The path winds through terraces of stone, each terrace planted with maize. The green tassels whisper as we pass. Old women work among the rows, their hands dark and careful, and when they see the log they straighten, one by one, and lift their faces to it. They do not call out. They only watch, the way one watches a procession of something sacred, unhurried, unsurprised, as if trees have always come walking down this mountain and always will. In a small village nestled between two streams, the children are the first to hear us. They come running through the alleyways with their dogs at their heels, laughing, pointing. The older folk follow more slowly, drying their hands on their aprons, stepping out of doorways filled with the smell of toasted tortillas. And then, without anyone quite deciding to begin, a song starts. It is a simple song, a walking song, a song for timber and for travelers, passed down through more grandmothers than anyone can count. The men pulling the log take it up, and the women by the grinding stones take it up, and even the children who do not know all the words hum along the parts they do know. The song moves with the log moves with the song. For a little while, walking and singing are the same thing. We leave the village behind. The path dips into a shaded hollow where a stream crosses it. The men pause. They let the log rest. They drink from cupped hands and splash water onto their faces, and one of them leans against the sleeping timber as though it were an old friend. The boy with the rollers sits down in the moss and closes his eyes for just a moment. A dragonfly lands on his knee. He does not open them. The sun climbs a little higher. The shadows grow a little shorter. Somewhere far off, a flute is playing. So far off that you cannot be sure whether it is a flute at all, or only the wind remembering one. And still the log moves on. Down through groves of oak, down past shrines of piled stone, where travelers have left marigolds and small white candles. Down past a spring where a woman is filling a jar, who smiles and says nothing, because nothing needs to be said. The lake is nearer now. You can feel it in the softness of the air, and the great cypress, patient as ever, goes on drifting down the mountain toward the water that has been waiting for it all along. And so the water receives it, not with a splash, not with a sound that might startle a sleeping bird, but with the soft sigh of something long expected finally arriving. The cypress slips into the shallows of Xochimilco and floats there, turning gently, as though testing the new shape of its life. The lake holds it the way a mother holds a child that has just come home from a long errand. Patient, familiar, unhurried. From the reedy shore, a Wright is already watching. He has been watching, in truth, for most of the morning. He stands with his arms folded across a woven shawl the color of old earth, and his eyes, dark and calm as well water, follow the log as it drifts toward the little wooden posts where the felled trees are gathered. He does not hurry. No one hurries here. To hurry, in Xochimilco, is to betray the wood. The wood must be coaxed, not commanded. The wood remembers the mountain, and it must be allowed to forget slowly in its own time. He lifts a hand, and two younger men wade out to meet the cypress, their bare calves cool in the green water. He lifts a hand, and two younger men wade out to meet the cypress, their bare calves cool in the green water. Together they guide it in, nudging it with the soft patience of shepherds bringing a tired lamb to pasture. And when at last the log rests at the edge of the village, the old Wright places his palm upon its flank, closes his eyes, and listens. For a long moment there is nothing but the whisper of the reeds. Then, with a small nod, as if the tree has answered some unspoken question, he turns and walks up the narrow path toward the workshops. The workshops of Xochimilco are not grand places. They are low and humble and beautiful. Adobe walls warmed to the color of baked honey by generations of afternoon sun. Roofs of thatched reed, layered so thickly that the rain, when it comes, can only murmur upon them like a lullaby. Doorways hung with curtains of woven fiber that sway in the breeze from the lake. And inside, always, the soft orange glow of a small fire. Step through the curtain now. Let your eyes adjust. The air smells of cedar shavings and damp earth, and the faint, sweet smoke of pine resin burning low in a clay brazier. Tools rest in their proper places along the walls, each one oiled, each one worn smooth by many hands. There are adzes with handles polished by decades of grip. There are chisels of obsidian and copper, sharpened so finely that they catch the firelight like small dark stars. There are ropes and wedges and wooden mallets, and in a corner, a pile of curled shavings, as soft and pale as the inside of a seashell. And here, by the light of the hearth, a master sits with his apprentice. The boy is perhaps 12 years old. His hair is dark and his eyes are very wide, and he is holding a piece of wood in his lap, as carefully as if it were a sleeping animal. The master, whose beard has gone the color of river fog, is guiding the boy's hand, showing him how to feel the grain, how to find the hidden current within the tree. "Here," the old man murmurs. "Do you feel it? The wood wants to curve this way. Do not argue with it. A good canoe is not made." The boy nods slowly, and the firelight dances across the adobe wall behind him, throwing their two shadows together into one long, patient shape. All around the village, this same quiet lesson is being taught. In one workshop, a woman is weaving the grass that will cushion the benches of a finished canoe, her fingers moving with the soft rhythm of a heartbeat. In another, two brothers are rubbing beeswax into the hull of a nearly completed vessel, their cloths moving in slow, circular prayers. And somewhere a grandmother is singing, very softly, an old song about a heron who taught the first Wright how to shape a boat from a fallen tree. The song drifts out through the open doorways. It mingles with the smell of the cedar and the hush of the lake and the low crackle of the cooking fires. It wraps around the little village like a shawl, gentle and warm and worn soft by time. And outside on the quiet shore, the cypress log rocks ever so slightly in the shallows, waiting its turn, dreaming perhaps of the shape it is about to become. And the log does dream in its own slow way. Wood remembers water. It remembers the rain that fed its roots for 100 quiet years, the mist that curled around its branches, the slow drip of dew from its high green needles. It remembers the rain that fed its roots for 100 quiet years, the mist that curled around its branches, the slow drip of dew from its high green needles. Now, resting in the shallows beside the village, the cypress remembers all of it at once and lets the lake speak softly to its grain. The Wrights come at dusk, when the heat of the valley has begun to lift and the first cool breath slips down from the mountains. They come in twos and threes, barefoot along the path of smooth stones, carrying adzes of polished obsidian, little bundles of pine torch, gourds of water, and soft woven mats to sit upon. There is no hurry in their step. There never is. Hurry, the old ones say, belongs to the hummingbird and the market crier. The canoe belongs to the moon. They roll the log up onto a bed of reeds, turning it with ropes of woven maguey, murmuring to it the way one murmurs to a sleeping child. The bark has already been stripped weeks ago, in a single gentle spiral, and the pale wood beneath glows faintly in the last of the daylight, the color of honey left on a windowsill. Along its spine, a long, shallow groove has been marked with charcoal, a soft, dark line drawn by a grandmother's careful hand. This is where the hollow will begin. This is where the river inside the tree will be set free. When the first stars appear, one by one, like lamps lit in distant houses, the tapping starts. It is not a loud sound. It is patient, rhythmic, almost musical. Tock, tock, tock. A small curl of wood lifts and falls away. Tock, another. The adze is guided more by listening than by looking. The Wrights close their eyes sometimes, feeling the grain the way a weaver feels thread, letting the tool find the soft places, avoiding the knots where the tree once held a branch up to the sun. And the moon rises. Oh, how it rises over the Valley of Mexico on a night like this. Round and slow and silver, climbing above the volcanoes as if it has all the time in the world, because of course it does. It spills across the lake in a long shining road, and the little canoe-to-be rocks gently in that light, half born, half dreaming, while the Wrights work on and on. Now comes the part that takes patience, the way a mountain takes patience. In a small fire nearby, round stones have been heating since afternoon. They glow now like sleepy embers, orange at the heart, soft gray at the edges. One at a time, with long wooden tongs, the Wrights lift these stones and lower them into the growing hollow of the log. Then water, poured slowly from a painted gourd, meets the hot stone, and a great hush of steam rises up, pale and curling, silvered by the moon. The wood breathes. You can almost hear it sigh. The steam creeps into every fiber, softening what was stubborn, loosening what was tight, coaxing the sides of the hollow to spread ever so gently outward. A finger breadth a night, no more. A hull is not carved, the old Wrights will tell you. A hull is persuaded. You ask the tree politely over many evenings if it might please become a boat. And if you ask kindly enough and steadily enough, and with enough warm water and enough moonlight, the tree will one day answer yes. Between the tappings and the steamings, there are long pauses. The Wrights sit back on their mats and share a little cup of atolla, thick and warm and sweet with vanilla, and they speak in low voices about ordinary things. Whose child is teething? How the chinampa beans are coming along. How the chinampa beans are coming along. Whether the herons have been seen near the northern reeds. Around them, the village sleeps. A dog stretches in its dreaming. Somewhere, a baby stirs and settles again. And the lake, the great shining lake, lays itself down flat as polished obsidian, holding the reflection of the moon as carefully as a mother holds a bowl of milk. Night after night, this is how it goes. Tap and pour and steam and rest. Tap and pour and steam and rest. Weeks pass in this soft cadence. The hollow deepens, the walls thin. The shape begins to reveal itself, the way a face emerges slowly from mist. And each morning, just before dawn, the Wrights cover the log with damp cloths and woven reeds and walk home quietly along the shore, leaving the half-made canoe to sleep beside the sleeping water, both of them dreaming the same long, lovely dream. And when at last the hull has dreamt enough, when the wood has been coaxed into its quiet curve, and the hollow within it waits like a cupped palm, the Wrights turn to the softer arts. For a canoe is not only a shell of wood, it is also a weaving. It is a small loom floating on the lake, threaded with fibers that remember the hillsides and the fields, the long hands of grandmothers and the patient mouths of ewes. The fibers come first from the maguey, that great gray-green plant that sprawls like a sleeping animal across the dry slopes above the valley. Its leaves are thick as a child's arm, each one tipped with a single dark thorn, and within them hides a thread finer than any silk. The Wrights' wives and daughters harvest these leaves in the cool of morning, and they scrape the green flesh away with smooth river stones slowly, rhythmically, until only the pale fibers remain. These are laid on flat rocks to dry, and they turn the color of old straw, the color of lamplight through linen, and they whisper when the wind passes over them. Then there is cotton, brought up from the warm lowlands in baskets, soft as cloud, smelling faintly of sun and of the long road. And there is the inner bark of certain trees, soaked and pounded until it lies in soft sheets. All of these are spun into cord, sometimes by the twist of a spindle, sometimes by the simple roll of a palm along a thigh, and the cords are laid in neat coils beside the canoe, each one a different thickness, each one waiting for its proper use. Now, the knots. Ah, the knots. There are knots in this valley that have names older than the stones of the temples. There is the knot called the sleeping heron, tied where the bowline meets the prow, a knot that holds tight in wind but loosens with a single gentle tug, as if the bird within it had only been resting and now chose to fly. There is the serpent's tongue, doubled and forked, used to bind the crossbeams of the seats, so strong it is said a canoe may split before this knot will yield. There is the woman's braid, 3 strands interwoven, warm and patterned and lovely to the eye, used where the paddle rest is fastened. And there is the little moon, a round closed loop tied at the stern for the tying of nets, a knot small and silver-looking even in the hand. Each knot has its song. These are not grand songs. They are humming songs, half-songs, the kind that a grandmother breathes out while her fingers are busy. They are humming songs, half-songs, the kind that a grandmother breathes out while her fingers are busy. They set the rhythm of the tying, for a knot tied too quickly will loosen, and a knot tied too slowly will tangle, and the song is the clock that keeps the hands in their proper measure. One verse, one loop. 2 verses, the loop is pulled. 3 verses, the tail is tucked home. Children learn the songs before they learn the knots, and sometimes a very small child can be heard humming the serpent's tongue while she plays in the dust, not yet knowing what her hands will one day do. The seats themselves are low and simple, woven of tule reed or carved of a single light board, lashed to the hull with the doubled maguey cord. The paddler kneels or sits with folded legs, and beneath him the seat gives just enough, breathes just enough, so that the long hours of poling through the canals do not wear at the bones. Along the inner walls run loops of cotton cord, soft to the hand, used for the tethering of baskets and gourds, and for the hanging of small charms, a bit of obsidian, a feather, a clay bead shaped like a fish, placed there to keep the canoe in the good favor of the water. And when all of this is done, when the rigging lies against the wood like veins under skin, the Wrights will sit back on their heels and look at the canoe, and they will say nothing for a while. They will only watch, because now the canoe has its language. It can speak to rope, speak to net, speak to paddle and pole and the soft knee of the fisherman. It can carry, it can bear, it can answer. Outside, the lake goes on with its slow breathing. The reeds lean a little in the late afternoon light, and somewhere far off a heron lifts itself from the shallows in a single patient beat of wings, as if it too had learned its name from a song, long ago beside a fire, when the world was still being tied together with gentle hands. Now the canoe waits in the long, low light of a late afternoon that is already thinking about becoming evening. It rests on a pair of woven mats beside the workshop, hull upward for a little while longer, smelling of cedar and lake water, and the faint, sweet resin the Wrights have rubbed into its seams. The village goes on around it in its quiet way, a grandmother shelling beans into a clay bowl, 2 children whispering over a string game, a dog turning 3 slow circles before settling in a patch of sun. And the canoe lies among these small sounds as if it were already one of them, already a neighbor, already home. When the light turns from gold to that softer color which has no true name, the elders come. They come without hurry. They come the way the heron lifts itself from the shallows, unfolding one slow movement at a time. The eldest of the Kalpuli carries a small gourd of ochre, a red so deep it seems to hold the memory of every sunset that has ever touched this valley. Another carries charcoal in a clean reed basket, black and soft as the inside of a sleeping bird's wing. A third carries nothing at all but her own hands, which are themselves a kind of carrying. They kneel beside the canoe, and the village gathers, and no one speaks for a while, because the hush itself is part of the ceremony. The way a pause between 2 notes is still part of the song. Then the eldest dips a finger in the ochre. On the prow she paints a small curving line, no larger than a sleeping child's smile. On the prow she paints a small curving line, no larger than a sleeping child's smile. This is the mark of the family, the water sign of the household that commissioned this vessel, and it is drawn without flourish, without pride, the way one writes one's name in soft earth with the tip of a twig. Beside it she adds 2 gentle dots in charcoal, and these are the purpose marks, one for fishing, one for carrying reeds home at the end of the day. Simple work. Honest work. The canoe's whole life, sketched on its brow in 2 colors older than any city. A second elder paints a thin band along the inner rail, ochre again, warm as a banked fire. And this is the blessing line, the invisible thread that will run between the paddler's heart and the lake's slow heart whenever the canoe is out on the water. Where the line passes the bow, she lets it trail off into the wood, unfinished, because a blessing, she says softly to no one in particular, should never be tied at both ends. It should keep going. It should keep arriving. Then the elders lay their hands on the hull, not heavily, not as claim, only as greeting, palm to cedar, breath to grain. They murmur the old words, words so worn by use they have become round and smooth like river stones, words that thank the tree for its long standing, and the lake for its long listening, and the family for its long tending. And the canoe takes these words into itself, the way dry earth takes a first mild rain, without drama, without fuss, simply by becoming a little more itself. And at last, it is time for the name. The youngest of the Wrights, the one whose grandfather first felled the tree, kneels at the stern and bends close to the water, lapping at the edge of the mat. He does not speak the name aloud to the gathered people. He speaks it only to the lake, in the smallest voice a voice can have, a voice barely louder than the brushing of reeds. The lake receives it. A ripple goes out, perhaps from a fish, perhaps from the evening breeze, perhaps from something the waking world has no name for, and the name is given, and the name is accepted, and the canoe, which has been waiting patiently through all its making, at last has the one thing it did not yet have. No one asks what the name is. That is not how names work here. A name whispered to the water belongs first to the water. The paddler learns it slowly, the way one learns the particular song of one's own child's breathing in the dark. Torches are lit. Not many. Just enough. The ochre glows a little deeper now, the charcoal a little softer, and the canoe in the gentle firelight looks less like a thing that has been built, and more like a thing that has been welcomed, coaxed out of the long patience of the forest and the long patience of the lake, and gently, gently set down among its people to rest before its first true morning. And so the morning comes, as mornings have always come to the valley, slow and silver, lifting itself from the lake in long pale veils that drift between the reeds and gather softly around the ankles of the fishermen already wading out to tend their nets. The air is cool and smells of wet stone and smoke and the faint green breath of the tulul, and somewhere a heron, patient as a priest, stands one-legged in the shallows, watching the water remember the shape of the sky. The canoe waits upon the shore. The canoe waits upon the shore. It has slept the night beside the embers of its making, and in the first gray light it seems almost to be breathing, the thin film of dew rising from its flanks like a soft exhalation. The men come quietly. They do not speak much on a morning such as this. There is no need. Each of them has known this moment since boyhood, has watched fathers and uncles bend to the same task, and the hush among them now is not solemn so much as tender, the way one is tender with a child who is about to take a first step. They lay their hands upon the hull. They lift. The canoe is lighter than one might expect, for all its length, because the wood has been coaxed and coaxed and coaxed again until only what is needed remains, and what remains is strong, the way a reed is strong, supple, the way a willow is supple, willing the way a good heart is willing. They walk it down the slope of pebbles to the lake's edge, and the pebbles whisper beneath their feet, and the canoe whispers too, a long low shush as its underside greets the wet sand. Then gently, as one slides a sleeping infant into a cradle, they ease it into the water. For a moment nothing happens. The canoe rests half upon the sand and half upon the lake, as though uncertain, as though listening. And then, with the smallest of sighs, the water takes it. The hull lifts. The keel finds its line. The whole long, beautiful length of it settles onto the surface of the lake and sits there and floats and is true. A small sound goes up among the men. Not quite a cheer. More like the soft, satisfied hum one makes when a knot is finally tied right, or when bread comes out of the oven the color it ought to be. One of the elders lays his palm flat upon the water beside the bow and murmurs a word of welcome, and the ripples move outward from his hand in slow, perfect rings. The youngest of them steps in first. He does this not out of pride but out of ceremony, for it is the custom that the newest hands feel the new vessel's first breath beneath them, that the canoe learn the weight of the coming generations. He kneels upon the woven reed mat. He takes up the paddle, pale and smooth and warm already from being carried against his chest. He dips it, and the canoe moves. Oh, how it moves! Not with the lurch of a heavy thing being pushed, but with the slow gliding grace of a leaf that has decided where it wishes to go. The water parts before the prow in two thin silver seams and closes again behind the stern in a long, gentle trail that will fade before the next cloud crosses the sun. The mist lifts away in soft, startled tatters. A pair of coots scatters, then settles. The heron does not even turn its head. Further out he goes, and further, until the shore behind him is only a thin, dark line of willows and the smoke of morning fires, and the lake all around is a great, still, shining thing. The snow on the far volcanoes, blushing faintly pink, the sky so wide and so kind that it seems to bend down low enough to touch. The canoe rides beneath him steady and listening. He feels it answer every small shift of his weight, every small turn of the paddle, as though it had known him always, as though the weeks of patient shaping were only the slow remembering of a shape the wood had always held inside itself. Wind comes. A little wind, the kind that barely stirs the feathers of a sleeping duck. The canoe meets it softly, tips only the gentlest finger's breadth, and rights itself again. The canoe meets it softly, tips only the gentlest finger's breadth, and rights itself again. He smiles. He lets the paddle rest across his knees, and for a long, quiet moment there upon the breathing lake, with the light growing golden and the valley opening around him like a cupped hand, the young man and the new canoe simply drift, both of them at last where they have always been meant to be. And let us drift now softly from his quiet hour. Let us drift out across the wider water, following the slow current of the day as it carries us northward, toward the place where the lake begins to bloom. For here, where the shallows gather warm against the reeds, something wondrous has taken root. Here are the chinampas, the floating gardens of Anahuac, long green rectangles woven from earth and willow, from lake mud and patient hands, each one tethered to the living water like a page in some vast unfurling book. 1,000 of them, 10,000, stretching out in gentle grids, soft-edged, green upon green, with narrow canals running between them like silver threads drawn through emerald cloth. And everywhere the canoes. Slim and dark, they glide between the garden rows as quietly as thoughts. Some are piled high with marigolds, orange as the coming dusk, their petals trembling with each stroke of the paddle. Some carry maize, still in the husk, golden and pale and sweet-smelling. Some bear squash, round and heavy, warm from the morning sun. Some carry chilies so red they seem to hold a little fire inside them. And some, the small ones, the family ones, carry only a basket or two of beans, a clutch of herbs, a child half asleep against a grandmother's knee. Listen now to the gentle music of this place, the dip and pull of 100 paddles, the soft knock of wood against wood as two canoes pass each other in a narrow lane, the murmur of voices trading news, trading gossip, trading the small warm words that bind a village together. A dog barks once, far away, and then settles. Somewhere a woman sings a cradle song to a baby bundled among the flowers, and the song follows the water all the way to the horizon. These are the vessels that feed the great city. These are the hands that hold Tenochtitlan afloat. For upon the island at the lake's heart rises the grandest market the world has ever known, Tlatelolco, where 60,000 souls come each day to buy and to sell, to weigh and to wonder. And every bundle of flowers laid upon its mats, every stack of tortillas steaming in its baskets, every silver fish flashing upon its scales, every single one of these things has arrived by canoe. By quiet, patient canoe. By these humble wooden hulls that slip through the dawn and the dusk, carrying the breath of the highlands to the hungry heart of the city. Imagine it, dear listener. Imagine the pre-dawn hour when the lake still wears its cloak of mist and already the canoes are gathering. Dozens of them, hundreds, drifting out from every village along the shore, from Xochimilco, from Mixquic, from Chalco, from Iztapalapa, each one heavy with the harvest of its own small corner of the valley. Fathers at the prow, mothers at the stern, children folded between the baskets, drowsy and warm, and above them all the stars still burning, and below them all the dark mirror of the water, and ahead of them the slow pink blooming of the eastern sky. They do not hurry. The lake will not allow hurrying. The lake will not allow hurrying. The lake teaches, by its very nature, the gentle art of going just fast enough. And when the sun at last rises, and the mist lifts, and the causeways of Tenochtitlan appear shining upon the water like roads made of pearl, then you would see it. You would see 1,000 canoes all converging at once like petals drawn toward a single blossom, moving in slow and orderly braids through the canals of the city, tying up at its wooden quays, unloading their cargo of flowers and corn and fish and dreams into the waiting arms of merchants and cooks and priests and children. This is commerce, yes, but it is also something softer than commerce. It is the daily kindness of a valley feeding itself. It is the old covenant between water and earth, between farmer and eater, between the canoe wright in his quiet shed and the child biting into warm bread upon a distant rooftop. None of them may ever meet. None of them need to. The canoes carry the love between them, back and forth, from the gardens to the city, from the city to the gardens, endlessly, gently, like breath itself. And so as the canoes carry their quiet cargo of love back and forth across the water, the sun begins its slow descent behind the western mountains. The light changes. It always does at this hour. The hard brightness of the afternoon softens into something golden, something honeyed, something that seems to pour itself over the lake rather than shine upon it. The water, which all day has been a mirror of sky, becomes a mirror of fire, and then a mirror of embers, and then at last a mirror of dusk. The Wrights feel it in their bones before they see it in the sky. The change of the hour, the gentle turning of the day toward rest. One by one, without needing to be told, they begin to set down their tools. An adze is wiped clean and laid across a wooden bench. A bone awl is slipped into a small leather pouch. A bundle of fiber cord is coiled carefully and hung upon a peg. Each tool finds its place, the way a tired child finds its bed. The fires that burned all day beneath the hulls, softening the wood, shaping the curves, are banked now with ash. The flames sink low. The coals glow orange in the gathering dimness, breathing slowly, as though they, too, are settling in for the night. A thin ribbon of smoke rises from each workshop and drifts out over the lake, where it mingles with the evening mist, and the mist mingles with the dusk, and everything becomes soft, and everything becomes one. The Wrights wash their hands in the cool lake water. They splash their faces. They rinse the sawdust from their arms. The water around them darkens, and they can see their own reflections wavering there. Tired faces, kind faces, faces that have spent the day in careful labor, faces that are ready now to rest. They gather, these quiet craftspeople, at the water's edge. Some sit on low wooden stools, some sit directly on the warm earth, some lean against the trunks of Ahuehuete trees, those ancient cypresses whose roots drink from the lake and whose branches hold the first stars of evening. No one speaks. There is no need to speak. The day has said everything it needed to say, and now it is the evening's turn. Before them, the canoes they have worked upon lie in a long row along the shore. In the fading light, their shapes grow indistinct. In the fading light, their shapes grow indistinct. The fine details of the carving disappear first, then the patterns of the grain, then the color of the wood itself. The canoes become silhouettes, then they become shadows, then they become simply darker shapes within the darkness, resting on the lake like sleeping creatures, rising and falling gently with the breath of the water. From across the lake, from the floating gardens of the chinampas, a song begins. It is soft at first, almost too soft to hear. A woman's voice, perhaps, or a grandmother's, or the voice of many grandmothers carried together on the evening breeze. It is a lullaby. It has been sung here for longer than anyone remembers. The melody is simple and old, and it winds its way across the water the way the canoes wend their way between the islands, without hurry, without end. The Wrights listen. They do not sing along, they only listen. And as they listen, the first stars appear above the mountains, one by one, like small silver beads threaded onto the dark cloth of the sky. A heron glides low across the water and settles somewhere unseen among the reeds. A frog begins its slow nightly chorus. A single lamp flickers to life in a distant doorway, and then another, until the shore is dotted with little warm lights, like a reflection of the stars above. The lake is very still now. The chinampas are very still. The canoes are very still. Even the Wrights, sitting by the water's edge, are so still that they seem to have become part of the landscape itself, part of the lake, part of the long and gentle history of this valley in the mountains. And somewhere in that stillness, sleep begins to come, not suddenly, but softly, the way dusk comes, the way mist comes, the way the lullaby comes across the water, note by note, breath by breath. The canoes rest, the Wrights rest, the lake rests, the valley rests, and the ancient waters of Highland Anahuac hold everything gently, as they have always held everything gently, rocking the world to sleep beneath a sky full of quiet stars. Rest now, rest well. The canoes will still be there in the morning. There is nothing more tonight that needs to be done. The day has been gathered, the work has been honored, the boats are at rest along the shore. Close your eyes. The lake is quiet. The stars are kind. The canoes are waiting, patient as lamplight, for a morning that is still a long, soft way away. Sleep now. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. The lake will keep watch.